In the light of man's notorious short-sightedness in accepting what is good for him, we may well ask how the beneficial results of social science are to be realized in the face of human contrariness. Mr. Lundberg steps up bravely to this obstacle and says the social scientist is going to need authority. A lot of nonsense has been written about authority in the past, he assures us. We need not fear authority as such, but only incompetent and unwisely constituted authority. And of course, we have nothing to fear from the godlike scientist whose hand does not tremble with human weaknesses. When we realize how wise he is, we will not hesitate to delegate authority to him, any more than we now hesitate to delegate authority to the physician. In the future, all persons who presume to speak with authority will be expected to submit credentials of training and character to the state, whether they purport to speak for God or for nature, as Mr. Lundberg says. Mr. Lundberg here ignores one aspect of the problem. He neglects to state that the authority of the physician is something to which we submit voluntarily. We ignore his advice to our possible peril, but ignore we can if we so choose. But in England and America today, the civil service is overloaded with social scientists whose theories we cannot ignore because they are backed up by the weight of law and governmental compulsion. In this scheme of things, what is the role of education? Mr. Lundberg says we must, as soon as possible, inculcate into our population a rudimentary understanding of the nature of scientific method as applied to human affairs, and a conviction that this is the only effective approach. As far as the curriculum is concerned, he feels that it should be divided into two compartments: science and the arts. Science, of course, being the accredited arbiter of physical and social fact, with the arts, including literature and a good deal of history, recognized as pleasant stimulants of the imagination and the emotions, but never to be accepted as truth until tested by the methods of science. As for the effects of social science on religion, Mr. Lundberg is quite cheerful. As ethical norms change and affect human institutions, including the church, social science will greatly facilitate this adjustment, he says, because through science, man can secure a very much more adequate knowledge of the consequences of different types of conduct instead of relying upon ancient and arbitrary authority for this counsel. End quote. Having thus chipped away at the foundation and basis of religion, one might suppose it was left in rather a shattered state. Such is not the case. Religion, like the arts, is to continue as a recreational and aesthetic stimulant. Mr. Lundberg has always suspected that this side of religion has a deeper appeal, anyway, than its ethical and moral content. I've quoted from this book at such length because it seems to me to be an accurate and representative statement of the spirit and intellectual temper of a large part of American life, and especially of those who dominate the life of our public schools. This spirit seems to me, to put it mildly, a little on the pretentious side. Taking the term science in one of its meanings, there is no reason why social scientists and sociologists shouldn't term the body of information they collect about social behavior science, if they want to. I suppose any body of systemized information about anything can be called science. But as traditionally understood, science means a good deal more than this. It means mathematical, exact knowledge discovered through induction and experimentation. It is what we acknowledge as truth in the sense of proven facts. Considered in the light of this definition, a great deal of what passes for social science can hardly be termed science at all. A body of interesting and enlightening information, perhaps, but hardly exact and eternal truth. Much of it is not even enlightening. It's pointless. For example, a recent questionnaire sent out by a research organization asked 4,000 teachers if they enjoyed teaching. Not content with this simple and direct question, the researchers divided it into categories, asking the teachers if they seldom enjoy teaching, usually enjoy teaching, enjoy it but could have learned to like something else equally as well, enjoy it enough to be sure they prefer it to other work, enjoy it so much it is to them the most adventurous, exciting, and thrilling of all professions. The resulting percentages are said to provide valuable comparisons, and we are left to presume that the circumstance that 39% of 1,700 rural women teachers prefer teaching and 11% are in the more precise category of thinking of it as exciting, that this isolated bit of information constitutes valuable scientific data. If space permitted, one can multiply 100-fold examples of this kind of social research, particularly in the field of education. The results of many of these projects are now masses of yellowing paper in the storage files of foundations and other organizations devoted to research. But unfortunately, they all too often are used as the basis of policy. The chief reason social science cannot be a real science is because of the subject matter with which it largely deals. Man as a human and social being. The scientists can tell us some pretty exact truths about man as a physical animal, for in the animal realm, human beings share uniform characteristics and react to the stimulus of the environment in uniform ways. In the realm of behavior, however, man is less predictable. And the moment you have established some seemingly invariable laws governing his conduct, he will, in the most ornery fashion, fly off in another direction. This is a distressing fact to the social scientist because it upsets the nice balance of his formulas and predictions. Very often, he will peevishly deny that it is true. He will tell us that we are predictable because what we do is not a matter of free choice. We do it because we can't help ourselves. Our actions are determined by forces outside conscious choice, the state of our glands or the dictates of our subconscious. The same determinism, he would tell us, also dooms social groups. This is the point where he rushes in as knightly savior. You'll make a scientific study of social behavior. Give us a true picture of the facts, and by intelligent planning, ameliorate social conflicts and bring about social peace and well-being. He recognizes only one truth, and science is its name. But what he calls prejudices, man's ingrained habit of setting up ethical and moral ideals, his belief that his own life must mean something and that the universe should make sense, are certainly facts about the nature of man, for demonstrably they exist and always have existed. No matter how irritating it may be to sociologists, man is a metaphysical as well as a physical and political animal. Man is also a creative artist who cannot resist recording his visions and imaginings. Is it not barely possible that this passion for religion and art, based on the desire for order, meaning, and expression, can be refined to the point where it also is a means for discovering truth? And is it not probable that the good society is a hopeless aspiration until individual men are bound together by common truths and common values by which to judge all action? Is not this what Plato, as quoted by Sir Richard Livingston, meant when he said that the use and excellence of all sciences and all knowledge will fail us without the knowledge of good and evil? Under the guidance of the scientific spirit, modern education cannot but fail to give young people a knowledge of good and evil. For to the social scientist, these are relative terms. The student is taught to believe that goodness is what works out, something that brings beneficent fruits in social and personal life, without defining any standard of beneficence. Standards and values are, to the modern educator, pre-scientific, theological terms. It is precisely this attitude that produces in the student that sinister lack of individual moral freedom, which Lafcadio Hearn declared was the result of Japanese education, which, as he pointed out, has always been an education based on social cohesion. This from Japan, an interpretation, as quoted by Isabel Patterson in The God of the Machine, 1943. By fostering this attitude in the student, he will never know whether we're right and Hitler was wrong. He will never develop any value system by which to judge the intrinsic worth of anything. At best, this kind of education will produce only clever, wary animals who have learned how to keep out of trouble. Assuming that collectivism, pragmatism, and scientism are to become ever-broadening influences in the future, and that education will be their handmaiden, let us imagine the life of an American average citizen in the year 2000. Aside from producing him, his parents will be a negligible factor in his life, for the upbringing of citizen robots can hardly be left to the whims of individuals. Private schools by then will have been abolished as antisocial, and the child will, perforce, go to a public school, where science will be the dominant part of a curriculum aimed at preparing him for the realization of his best self and the higher loyalty of serving the state. His high school and college training will be strictly utilitarian, devoted to learning a specialty assigned to him by the state, for as production and all industrial activity and the professions will be controlled, the state will decide who and how many are to enter each activity. If he shows unusual talent for leadership, he'll be trained in a special school for public officials. This will be an honor for which the competition will be keen, for in a society where the state is supreme, as in Russia today, the bureaucrats will be the favored class. If by chance the scientific attitude has not entirely succeeded in wiping out an atavistic leaning toward the problems of philosophy and art on the part of some persons, they will be permitted to express themselves in either of two ways, either by purveying official philosophy and official art, or by providing innocuous and trivial entertainment for the relaxation of those who are carrying on the serious business of the state. If, by some miracle, our future citizen has a yearning for the delights of religion, there will be churches for him to attend, strictly for aesthetic stimulation, of course, for since the clergy will be licensed by the state, they won't be caught setting up any rival moralities or acknowledging any higher authority. Love will be put on a scientific basis. No longer will marriage be an act of faith, but when our imaginary citizen decides to marry, he will go to a state-operated marriage clinic, where his prospective partners will be tested to predict the probable relative degrees of happiness he might have with each. An official guidebook to sane and scientific sex living, revised annually, will be by his bedside, ready to give him the latest lowdown on when and how. Indeed, everything he does and thinks will be shaped and colored by the revealed truths of social science, and will be done and thought in mass unison. All spontaneous individual and social action will wither away. The group and the state will reign supreme. But possibly this is too dark and hopeless a picture. Perhaps the small, fierce spark of man's spirit, the spark of his passion for freedom and personal dignity and for his own personal secrecies, may prove to be not entirely extinguishable. Perhaps this spark, nurtured and guarded by scattered eccentrics, will be fanned into flames of sedition, great enough to undermine and destroy the new order. It has happened before in the long course of man's history on this earth, and it could happen again.